up. And as history and human society is playing out in the life of the Prophet, the Quran is reflecting those higher principles in words that are a response and a guidance for those individual circumstances. That's a gradual process. That's a historical process. It's not that Allah had the book kind of in storage and He said, all right, I'm going to reveal it in pieces. Here's page 1, and then I'm going to take out page 2, and I'm going to reveal page 2, and I'm going to reveal page 3 separately. It's not that the book existed in this form and that Allah was kind of withholding it and saying, I'm going to give it to you gradually. It was that that level of the Quran was a response in human history and using human language, but reflecting those eternal and those divine principles. Which is why you needed to have the Prophet, because that mirror can only be somebody who is mutahhar, somebody who is ma'asum, who can reflect that higher reality and refract it into something that you and I can understand. If it had just been the book existing, the Prophet's giving it, you don't need to have a prophet or a ma'asum or a mutahhar person. Anybody can just take a letter and convey it and deliver and say, sign here, and this is the certified letter that I'm giving to you. So that was the reality of the Quran. So the point is that the Sha'nun Nuzul comes at that end stage, at the coincidental historical level. But what the Imams are telling us is a higher level, a deeper level. And so when we don't have that limitation, rather than the assumption that people make that these are just kind of responses that the Shia make in order to give the impression that the whole Quran is about Imam Ali, give the impression the whole Quran is about the friends and the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. No, they are looking at it from that deeper level and that higher level of the Quran. So the order of the Quran is important, and for you and me, because we don't have that direct access, we use language, study of grammar, study of Arabic lexicon, the study of history, the study of hadith. We need to use those means to get that meaning. But in our time also, we shouldn't focus on just the history, we should focus on the present relevance. The history is a means to get to that present relevance, it is not the end. And so we're not writing or describing or thinking about a tafsir in terms of what was the Quran talking about. But we are looking, thinking, and describing the Quran as if everything is present. And that is why the Quran says to the Jews, فَلِمَ تَقْتُلُونَ أَنْبِيَاءَ اللَّهِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ إِن كُنْتُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. That if you are believers, why are you killing the prophets of God? When were they killing the prophets of God? Not just the past, but thousands of years ago. It wasn't even, your parents did it, your grandparents did it, and you're still benefiting from it. It's thousands of years ago. وَإِنَّ مِنْ شِيعَتِهِ لَإِبْرَاهِيمَ. Ibrahim was a Shia of Nuh. Nuh was probably part of prehistory even in the time of Prophet Ibrahim. They didn't have historical records like we have historical records, and those were not people that had built pyramids and their monuments and their buildings survived. It was prehistory. It was just legend and stories and oral history, no writing, no monuments, and at least before the flood there were probably no archaeological remnants either. So, how could he be a Shia? Because Nuh alayhi salam's message was alive, and Ibrahim was following that message. It doesn't matter if it was 50 years, or 500 years, or 5,000 years. Nuh alayhi salam and Ibrahim alayhi salam are connected directly. Similarly, we are connected to the Prophet. Evildoers are connected. So those who are following the footsteps of Yazid, they are the students and the children of Yazid today. There is no separation. And that is the Muslim belief of how the cause of truth and the cause of evil, they are united, and spiritually they are linked. It's not just a slogan, but it is a deeper reality and a truth. So the point of that explanation was what? To say that in the Quran, it is not a matter of time. It is not a matter of circumstance. that is what's greatest importance for our understanding of the text. But it is a matter of that message and the spiritual import of the verses. So in Surah Naba, there's just one or two other points that I would like to briefly pause at, and then we can continue to Surah An-Nazi'at. The Quran says that there will be a suffering, a punishment that some people will have in the hereafter. Normally, that punishment is described as khulud fil adhab, or ma'wahumun nar hum fiha khalidun. They will stay forever in hell. But then there is another type of punishment in the hereafter, which is mentioned in this surah. Inna jahannama kanat mirsada. That hell is in wait and watching for certain people to come. لِلطَّاغِينَ مَآبًا. It's a place where the rebellious will return to. That's their home. Ma'aba. And aba ya'ubu oban means a place to return, a repose. So God is not sending you to hell. The unbelievers, the idea that people have, why is God, if He's so merciful, why is He sending people to hell? He's not sending people anywhere. Whatever we have done, whatever we have built, Allah is just going to be just and fair in giving it to us. I build paradise for myself in this world, and Allah will say, here it is. And if I build hell for myself, then it would be unjust for Allah to say that you worked for it, you made an effort for it, and I'm not going to give it to you. This is what I wanted. I might not have said it, but I did it. And if that's what I wanted, then it's simply a matter that Allah is saying, you're going back. لِلطَّاغِينَ مَآبًا. It is their place of return. لَابِثِينَ فِيهَا أَحْقَابًا. They will repose in it for ahqab. Ahqab is the plural of huqb, which means a period of time. And there's different hadith of what that period of time means. In one hadith, it said that it means 60-some years. In another hadith, we say that we're told that it means 80-some years, maybe 80 years or 88 years, a certain number of years, it's a few decades. And that's a lifetime. So whether the hadith about 60-some years is accurate, or whether the hadith of 80-some years is accurate, that refers to about a human lifetime. Average lifetime in the time of the Prophet until our time is 6 decades, 7 decades, 8 decades. That's a human lifetime. And maybe the difference in those hadith is also because people have different lifetimes. So what does that mean? لَابِثِينَ فِيهَا أَحْقَابًا. They're going to stay in the hellfire for few lifetimes. It's a plural, some lifetimes. And it's not lifetimes, it's periods of time. But we're comparing that to a lifetime. So there are a hadith from our imams that say there are two kinds of people who will go to hell. There are those who will stay in hellfire because they really worked for it. They determined that they wanted it. And then there are those people who might have sinned, but they also were good in their heart and in their intentions, and they had some belief. So they did work for hell because they sometimes disobeyed Allah. But they had not chosen hell because they asked forgiveness and they did good deeds. Some of those people who did tughyan and were rebellious, they will go to hell. But it won't be for eternity. So the Imam says that this verse is referring to those who are not khalidina fin nar, but they will go there for a period of time. Now, the Quran describes the fact that for some people who are going to go into the punishment for a short period of time, that was kind of an excuse not to take religion too seriously. وَقَالُوا لَن تَمَسَّنَا النَّارُ إِلَّا أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودًا. That the fire is only going to touch us for a few days, so we'll enjoy this world, and then we'll go and we'll burn in hell for a short time. What's the worst that could happen? What is punishment in comparison with eternity? And that was what the Quran quotes that some people would say that, well, we'll always be able to make up for it. So the hadith of the Prophet says that first of all, know what it means when the Quran says a few lifetimes. Ahqab means lifetimes. Every huqb is 60-some, 80-some years. Every year is 360 days. And remember that every day is alfasanatin mimma ta'uddun. Every one of those days is 1,000 years according to your calculations. Every day is 1,000 years. And there's 360,000 days then, or 360,000 years for every year of the huqb. And then every huqb is perhaps 60 or 70 years. And then there are ahqaban, which the Quran doesn't say how many. They stay for many of them. Maybe 3, that's the minimum. But a plural can also be not 3, but 3,000 or 3 million. And there's a hadith of the Prophet. He says, don't let any of you think that because people are not going to stay forever in hell, that you can say that, well, لَن تَمَسَّنَا النَّارُ إِلَّا أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودًا, so I'll enjoy the pleasures of this world and the sins of this world, and then I will also eventually get forgiveness in the hereafter. That will be a grievous torment. What's going to determine whether it's 1 huqb, or 2, or 3, or more? The level at which I knowingly and deliberately chose to disobey God. So if it was a temptation, then it might be that Allah will say that, well, you have to suffer some punishment because you committed a sin, but very quickly will be able to be forgiven from it. This is where the hadith come from that tell us that in some cases to commit a sin of passion is less punishable by Allah than for a person to miss his prayer. Because when I miss my prayer, the only reason I miss my prayer is because I don't care enough. It's not that shaitan has overcome me, my emotion, my passion, my anger has overcome me. Usually, exceptional circumstances when we stay asleep or we don't have control is the exception to the rule. Normally, if I don't pray, it means that I know it's time and I don't have anything better to do, but I just say that I don't want to make the effort to spend 3 minutes to purify myself and to do salat. It's not that important to me. That is rebellion against Allah. Whereas when I'm angry and I say something and I do ghibat, or I might commit another crime of passion, that is ghalabatu shaitan, and then I can also seek forgiveness. Allah forgives that before He forgives the tughyan, the rebellious spirit. And so this verse says, لِلطَّاغِينَ فِيهَا مَآبًا. It is a place of repose, of return, of rest for those who have a spirit of rebelliousness. The very fact that I say that, well, it's only a short time punishment, means that I'm being rebellious. So if you commit a sin, and it's because you don't know any better, then you might have a very short accounting to make. But if I say that, well, I'm going to do it because eventually God will forgive me, your level of tughyan is less than my level of tughyan, even though both of us have done the same sin. And because my level of tughyan is greater, then I will stay there longer because it is the amount of tughyan and the fact of tughyan that determines that I have to stay in hellfire. So this message is a hopeful message, that there are people who may have committed sins and their punishment will come to an end. It's hopeful for us, and it's hopeful for other people as well. We don't ever look down on people, we don't ever send people to hell, we don't ever say that people are going to be punished. It gives us humility for our interactions with people, and it gives us hope in our own lives. But it should never make us arrogant to say that, well, I'll take the punishment, I'll take that challenge. Because the very fact that we're putting down the reality of God's judgment and His punishment means that our tughyan is increasing. And sometimes it is impossible for us even to know when have we crossed over that boundary from just being a person who suffers from tughyan into a person who suffers from kufran. Because there is just a very fine line between rebelliousness and rejection. And rejection is not something that is going to be just a temporary cleansing process in the hereafter. It is going to be eternal punishment. So these were a few of the verses and the messages of Surah Naba. And inshallah we will continue with a look at Surah Nazi'at from our future sessions. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.